Welcome. Today is September 10th. My name is Dr. Catherine Garforth of Garforth Education, and I am very excited to have Jenny Gray from Woodstock, Ontario. She's with Watermelon Works, and today we're going to discuss supporting our children in French immersion settings. And I'm really excited to have her with us today. But before we get started, I want to make sure that if you haven't already liked Garforth Education, make sure you do that and join our Garforth Education Parents group. While we're speaking, I will post links to those. This is where you're going to be able to hear about upcoming lives that we have. And I encourage you to join this. Jenny and I might touch base in the future, trying to get more of this information out there for the parents trying to help their kids in French immersion, especially if they don't speak French. I know that's the situation in our home. Anyway, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Jenny Gray. Hi, Jenny.
Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
That's great. So can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I'm Jenny Gray. I have a French linguistics degree from the University of Western. So that's kind of how I studied. What I do is I teach kids how to read, write, and speak French phonemically. Mm-hmm. And it's what I love to do. It is my passion. I want to tell you the why I do it, though. So it took Kevin for me to understand the student point of view. Kevin changed my life, he is why I do what I do. He's a bright-eyed, happy child who wanted to learn. He tried hard and gave his all every time he came to me for a lesson. Mm-hmm. But he's a diagnosed dyslexic. Every page in a book was a new experience for Kevin. Word recognition was very poor. And it wasn't until one day sitting reading with Kevin that sound blends appeared in a book, and the light went on for me, not for Kevin. I cracked his coding. So I realized that growing up as the sibling of a dyslexic and the daughter of a dyslexic, I had familial knowledge with how dyslexia functions. Mm-hmm. And because I understood Kevin and that he didn't read or write properly because he saw things differently, that I thought, wait, let's try a dyslexic technique with him. So it was at the end of the school year that I asked his parents, I said, I don't want to teach Kevin reading and writing like they would in the classroom. I want to do an experiment with him. I know it will work because of my linguistic background, but I want to see if this will work for him in the way that it should work for him. So we spent 8 weeks in the summer. We went over the 8 major sound blends for students in French. And at the end of the summer, weren't we all surprised that he could read, he could write, he knew the blends. Now, I'm not saying his dyslexia was cured by any stretch, because that is not how it works. But
dyslexia is not cured, right?
Exactly. Exactly. But he could function better in the classroom. He could get dragon dictation to work. And back in the 90s, that was almost a miracle. So we started out with handwritten business cards to use Play-Doh. And so he learned the nature and function of letters. And once we did that, it was amazing. It was like a light bulb switched on for him, and he could succeed. So we read every EMS book you could possibly imagine, because he was guaranteed in his head that he was going to be some kind of EMS. He was going to be either a paramedic, a firefighter, or a police officer. He graduated a few years ago, I think it was 2012, and became an EMS out in Vancouver.
Oh, amazing.
Yes, he has now become an officer. So I can't tell you where or what, but I can tell you he is my hero.
Of course.
He is a success of French immersion. He is a success of learning the code.
Amazing. So what advice do you have for parents that are in this situation where they have a child that's struggling to read in French immersion?
I strongly recommend that if your child is in the FI program and you want to assist them on their journey, then learn the code. And here's why. In knowing the code, you can pronounce word correctly. It doesn't mean you understand what you're reading, but you know how to apply the code to say the words. So either your child will say, no, you're saying it wrong, Mom. Or your child will say, that's what my teacher's trying to tell me. It's just you've taken the child from learning to read with some struggles to reading with comprehension. And sometimes that's all it takes. And learning the code is the easiest way to do that.
For sure.
Go ahead.
Does that mean that French is a lot more regular in their spelling patterns than English?
I would say 90-10, yes.
Wonderful.
I spend a fair amount of time every day listening to kids read. And if they're struggling the passage, I say, do you understand that? I usually get a response of, meh. And so I say, let me read it to you. And you get to see their eyes light up and how they feel when they read it to you because they understand it. So it's very cool.
Right, of course. Sorry, I'm having some little distractions at the moment with my own children.
That's okay.
So is that your main piece of advice for parents who have children in French immersion programs that don't speak French, is learning the code?
Learn the code. Because not only if you learn the code, right? Like if you work on with your children and learn the code, you learn pronunciation. You learn how to speak French. So you build some vocabulary with them. I'm not saying you're going to become bilingual by any stretch, but you'll be able to assist them because you'll be able to sound out words with them. And so that stops the struggle because it takes out the trigger.
Right. Now, do they have the same resources in French books as like decodable readers, or are they using the predictable texts?
I believe decodable readers are starting.
Right. Okay. Great. So do you have any other advice from learning the code for parents who are trying to support their child with home reading and their school assignments? Like, say if, I know a common thing over the spring for us that had to do distance learning is we get these emails and our children will get assignments where they, you know, the instructions are in French, but we don't understand them and aren't quite sure how to explain them.
But that's where, if you can crack the code, okay, if you can say the words properly, because the child has had exposure to those words and has heard them over and over and over in class, they'll be able to pick that up from you saying it. And that will make them go, oh, that's what she's saying. Okay.
Cool.
It really does work that easy.
Nice. So when you have a child that's struggling with reading in the French immersion program, as a parent, what do you suggest that they do?
So if they're struggling, I suggest you get support for them. So you can hire a tutor. Absolutely. They vary in prices, vary in regions. So, I mean, in this global age, you can get someone in a different province if you want, that's a different pricing schedule. But I don't want to see you spend all your money, because that's part of the problem when you're homeschooling, right? So I created the method, Watermelon Works French Sounds, and it's for like $54. It's the entire code that you need for French language for the rest of your life. It's your strong phonological base, okay? And I created it on the fact that 90% of the time, this letter in this combination is going to make this sound. 10% of the time, there's going to be liaison or an eucaduc. So you need to watch for that because the eucaduc will make the final consonant talk, right? French is based on the open syllable structure, whereas English is more consonant focused, so closed structure.
Right.
And it's a beautiful language, but you just need to know the code.
As you do with any language. So let's, I guess, go a little deeper linguistically.
Okay.
So in English, we have between 40 and 44 phonemes. How does that relate to French?
In French, there are 12 main vowels, 4 nasals, 3 semivowels, and the 21 consonants. So there's roughly 40 phonemes.
Right.
Right.
And
so it's similar in structure for the number of phonemes, but it's just, they're very distinct sounds.
Right. And so obviously it uses the same alphabetic system that English does. But they also have those accents. So what do those accents tell us?
So the accents tell us the different sounds. So if you picture your nose as the letter E, like if you're looking at a page and it's in print, that's the way the letter E is formulated. So if you take your hand and put it over your nose, that would be accent aigu. And it would make it sharp. So think aigu, sharp, right? So it's A. But if you put your hand the other way, it's the accent grave. And so grave, it's deep, so it's a softer, right? You put them together, it's accent circonflexe, it's eh. So it's like sheltering you, eh. So if you want a comparable sound, it's bed in English. So either side of the house is the b and the d. So you really just want the eh.
Awesome. So they don't have the same issues with the representations because so in English, as we were saying, we have between 40 and 44 phonemes, depending on the dialect that you're speaking, and the 26 letters. But in English, there are over 200 ways to represent those letter sound. Sorry, the phonemes with letter combinations. So you have your digraphs, trigraphs, quadraphs, representing.
Pictures.
Yeah, exactly. So in French, is it simpler?
I think so, because the way I have laid it out, there's 18 basic sounds that you need to know forever and ever and ever, and they're your vowel sounds. Because in comparing English to French, the consonant structure will be the same, right? There will be some differences, like TH does not exist in French. QU is not said the same in French.
Yeah.
CH is not the same in French.
Yeah.
So there's some differences, but those are explicit learning that you teach them, right? But it's the vowel structure that changes. And that's where most of the structure is in learning the code, in learning how to speak French effectively.
Okay, so then do you recommend teaching these, with a flashcard method, and how do you recommend teaching these and a parent learning the code?
So in the kit and I'm not trying to make this a sales pitch by any stretch, but in the kit, it comes with 4 levels of play, right? So the first level is the sound game. You can play it like concentration, go fish, flashcards, but it's just cards with letters on them. It's a patented method, and it makes sense. So you can use those cards for assessment as well, but dis-moi les lettres, dis-moi le son. So tell me the letters, tell me the sound. And that's how you can assess. So how I do it quickly, because I teach one-on-one, is I make 3 piles. First pile, they didn't need any help. Second pile, they needed a little bit of help. Third pile, they had no clue. So I focus on the no clue pile, because I need to get them up and running quickly so they can be on the same level playing field as their classmates. So that's where I start is, okay, and when you flip the cards over, you'll see the patterns, right? You'll see which ones are they really struggling on, and was this a whoops, or was this a wow, this is not good? Because you'll see that if there's most of one type of sound, that's their area of struggle. And normally the area of struggle is the difference between A and eh. Because there's so many ways to say A and so many ways to say eh, and they get them confused.
Understandable. So would that highlight a deeper phonological awareness issue, or So I know last week when we talked to Dr. Nancy Wise, she was saying that working on those phonological awareness and phonemic awareness task is something that you can do in English, and it is a transferable skill. We have lots of research showing that. So what do you recommend to parents who don't have that French language but still need to work on those phonological awareness activities with like rhyming and counting syllables, noticing the same sounds, alliteration, final consonant sounds?
The strategies work the same, but you need to learn the French coding. Because if you say ER in English, what does it say?
Sure.
If you say it in French, what does it say?
Couldn't tell you.
A.
Okay.
If you say it in Spanish, R.
Yeah.
My Spanish is really rough, so I'm really sorry, not trying to offend anyone. But they're all different, right? I mean, they all may be in the Romance language category.
Right.
But they all sound different. So if you teach a child ER in English says and you're teaching them in French that is acceptable, that's not really acceptable because it's not joueur, it's jouer.
Right. But I guess I consider that more phonics. As soon as you introduce the letters into the phonological awareness, it's no longer phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. As soon as letters are involved, that's a phonics side of thing.
Yeah.
But, if you aren't able to help them with the rhymes in French because you just don't have the vocabulary, working on English nursery rhymes or whatever their home language is, nursery rhymes, counting syllables. Counting syllables is a little bit easier to do across languages, but and then I suppose the phoneme segmentation and blending, but just alerting them to the alliteration and if words end in the same sound, doing that in English should be able to transfer to French fairly easily, as long as you're not trying to confuse a word. So if I'm saying car, cat, carrot, and dog. Well, dog's the one that doesn't begin with the same first sound, right? So if we've established that skill, then it should be something that they're able to access when they're speaking French.
Yes, because that's a transferable skill.
Yeah. So is it okay to work on these transferable skills like counting syllables, noticing the same first sound, noticing the same last sound in words in the English side of things, and then being fairly confident that, yes, they may need a little bit of help knowing the skill in French, but it should be something that they can do. Once they can do it in English, getting them to do it in French isn't going to take that much more.
Well, because they have the transferable skill, yes.
Yeah.
But the code is different, like the vowel structure is different.
Of course, the code you need to work on separately.
Yeah.
But if they have the ability to recognize the letters, they just need to learn the letter sound correspondence in French versus English.
Yep.
So how different are those for the consonant sounds? I know you mentioned with the blends that's where we see a lot of the differences. But for like the letter C, does it have a soft sound and a hard sound, or?
Yep.
And
so in French and English, the letter C having the hard and soft sound are very similar, and they follow the similar patterns. Like C-A, C-O, C-U is a K.
Yeah.
Whereas a C-E, C-I, C-Y is a S.
Right.
Right? And so that's transferable. So that's why I say the consonants are mostly transferable.
Okay.
That's why I focus on vowels.
Right. Right. Very cool. So do you have any recommendations? Like, I know there's a lot of programs out there that can help support. I know one that I frequently talk about is the Abracadabra program through OISE. Are you?
I don't know it.
You don't know it? Okay, then you probably can't talk about it. Yeah, it's just a program that helps. It's a little bit weak on the phonics side of things, but it's really good about working on phonological awareness activities, counting syllables.
Yep.
It does a little bit of work with word families, and working on that fluency side of things, and reading comprehension.
Okay.
But basically, am I right in saying, as far as working on interventions for comprehension, I mean, it's going to be the same in French as it is for English, as far as teaching the children to get the information from the book?
Yes, because those are transferable skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess what it's important as parents and educators to realize is what is a transferable skill and what is a language specific skill. Do you mind taking a minute and discussing?
Well, transferable skills are like what you were saying, like, so if you're going to teach a child to read, you need to know how to read words. In order to read words, you need to know the syllables. In order to know the syllables, you need to understand each individual unit of sound, right? So that's where the phonemes come in. Where I come in is I link the oral to the written, right? And so that's where it's a little bit different, because I teach nature and function, whereas phonemic awareness is just, here's a sound, this makes this sound, right? It's just a sound unit. But I link the two. So I go back to Saussure's linguistic sign theory. where every sign has a visual image and a phonetic structure. Okay, so that's nature and function.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you need to teach them individual sounds. You need to teach them syllables. And once you progress from syllables, then you make words. And in French, it's easier because most words are either just an individual vowel unit. So I call them sound cards because there are consonants involved. And or CV words are really simple. But the stress isn't always on the consonant in French because it's very flowy. Right. Whereas English, the stress is on the consonant.
Right. And then are there, like I know in French, just from exposure, that, you know, ending in the T usually doesn't mean it's going to be a T sound at the end of the word, right? So is there some logic that you can apply? Like if it's ET, it's like A and then ETTE. Are there things?
The tricks like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's different ways of knowing masculine and feminine nouns by their endings.
Right.
And in knowing sound structures that way. So if you wanted ET, because ET doesn't always say A, ET on its own says A, but ET in a word says A.
Okay, I'm thinking
so ET on its own is A, so the word and.
Yeah.
But ET in the word jouet.
Yeah.
Jouet. But there's no T sound to it, but it's an E. So Jouet, right?
Right.
And
what about something like ballet? Or am I just saying it wrong because it's...
Well, ballet is an English word.
Oh, I thought it was French.
Well, it's a French root word, but we use it in English, right? So that's why they say it's ballet.
Yeah.
But normally it's ballet.
Ah.
Right? Like the ET normally in French.
Right.
It can vary.
Yes.
But it also depends on where the structure of the syllable is, right?
Right.
B-A-L-E.
Right.
Ballet.
Right.
Right?
Okay. So what about kids that struggle with knowing the difference between masculine and feminine? I know that's a common issue for kids when they're learning the French, whether their first language or...
There is a really good resource for that, and I'm going to plug a small entrepreneur.
Sure.
It's Cahier by NG, and he has some freebies about, he also has paid ones, but he has some freebies about knowing the difference between masculine and feminine nouns and how to identify them.
Great, and that's something that viewers, if you're watching now live, we will drop the links below after when you're watching it on replay, so you can have access to them. But while we're speaking live, it's not always feasible to do that.
He's lovely, and he makes some really good stuff. And it's just, I mean, he is very talented.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So as far as reading resources, what do you suggest? Are there some great online resources to get those easy level books? Because when your child goes to French immersion, you won't necessarily have a bunch of beginning reading books at home. I know you can get them through Scholastic, but are there online resources that have a bunch of these available to you?
I don't know, because I don't use online resources. So I will tell you that's where I'm limited. Right. I still like books. I still like text, and I think you should still have text and touch it. So when I teach one-on-one, I get books from Scholastic or Librairie Michel Fortin. So I will order them from Quebec.
Right.
Or, just places like that. I mean, I know that there's a lot of publishers out there that have really good quality materials, right? So CNC Publishing, they have some good work.
Right, and again, we will make these resources available.
Yeah, I can give you a list of good publishers that have some really good quality books. Right. I stick to, because I don't believe in reinventing the wheel, I stick to the sounds, because that's what I do. I made ebooks for kids for decodable readers that go along with my program. But there's bookstores, and that's what they specialize in. So, and they're all reasonably priced. So, but they probably have online versions as well.
Great, wonderful. So I just see someone coming up now who was able to join late, and she's wondering, which system or program do you use? You were talking about flashcards, and so maybe talk about a little bit about Watermelon Works and what it is, just so parents and educators have a better idea about what you're talking about.
Okay, Watermelon Works was, again, designed for Kevin. So it's a kit, it's a 4-in-1 kit that contains the sound game, the consonant game, word building, and a repeat after me audio, because that's really the heart of what I do. So you can use it like flashcards, Go Fish, concentration, just different ways you want to play it. I've seen kids use it playing like war,
Right.
like, you know, the old card game.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to leverage that way, but it works. But it's whatever engages them, use it that way. And once they know all their phonemes,
Yeah.
and the linking of the written to the oral, then I move into the consonant game. So they learn how to syllable blend in its initial syllable making.
Mm-hmm.
After the consonant game, we make words. So we take the sound cards, the consonant cards, and we make words. We start off with really simple words because I play in primary land. And then we advance to more complex words. So you would spell words like épouvantail. So épouvantail, right? So you use 7 cards to get there. But it's just showing them different ways to hear that épouvantail has a lot of words, but there's only a lot of letters, but there's only 7 sounds.
Yeah.
So it's just another way to teach them that engages them. But the repeat after me audio is just, you play the audio and you repeat after it and you learn all your phonemes. Comes with a sound sheet that's a cheat sheet, side A, B, and then there's a C. And you just move from box to box and you learn your sounds.
Right. So like English, there isn't that necessarily that one-to-one correspondence between letter and sounds.
There's one-to-one. It's, well, not totally. There's about 10 different ways to say O.
Yeah.
There's 4 different ways to say E.
Yeah.
But it's, once you crack the code, you get it, and it's really, really easy because it's all based on patterns.
Right. I guess what I'm referring to is if they're breaking the word down into its individual phonemes, they're not going to have one letter represent one sound. So,
oh goodness, no.
Yeah, there'll be multiple, like a digraph or a trigraph that's going to tell them, so they can't just have, okay, one sound, one letter.
No, it's more morphemes.
Yeah. Yeah, so is there a part of, because I know something that I really encourage doing with students in English is working on morphological awareness. Is there an ability to do that with French as well?
That's exactly what I do.
Okay.
So we start off, like when I gather them all the same spellings in the same box, you start off with the original phoneme. So like O says O. But then you go into morphemes because that's more than one letter making the sound, that all the different ways to make that sound O.
Right. Okay, great. So that's another useful way. And does it have the same relationship to meaning with the morphemes or not? Like, I suppose it does with the masculine and feminine spelling. And
yeah, but it also, it's a descriptor, right? So it depends on what the letters are as to what that portion of the word means. Because if you use AIS, which is then it would indicate the conditional in verb tense, or it could indicate l'imparfait, or there's different things it could mean, right? It could be the present tense of the verb faire. So there, you have to look for what the code is, because all of the morphemes are encoded with the information that you need. Right.
So does it require an individual to look more at context as well to figure out pronunciation?
No.
No.
Once you know the code, this is the code.
Okay, great. Wonderful. And sorry, I just lost my question, but you had mentioned there was a quote you wanted to share. Can you do that while I'm trying to regather what I wanted to?
Yes. Cependant, une grande partie des difficultés d'apprentissage de la lecture ne provient pas de difficultés de compréhension, mais de difficultés de décodage, c'est-à-dire de difficultés à lire des mots réguliers sur le plan des correspondances graphème-phonème, ce qui est le cas de la plupart des mots du français. So I know it's in French, but it basically means learning challenges are not from a lack of understanding, but a lack of being able to decode. In other words, reading difficulties are a result of a lack of phoneme-grapheme correspondence knowledge, which is why I do what I do. I teach you the code.
And that's exactly what we need to focus on, learning the code, because, you know, the predictable nature of a lot of early readers are leveled texts that don't necessarily have the same spelling patterns and phonemes within them. So it's not very useful to work on one series and help teach the children the skills that they needed. And you said that we're just starting to see the decodable readers in French, but I know when I am working with families on learning to read in English, I also encourage working on spelling at the same time. And like, is there the same scope and sequence that you work on teaching the phonics?
I personally don't use a particular scope and sequence,
Right.
but I start with the least number of letter correspondences to a sound.
Right.
For a child. So I would start with sound sheet B, flip it over, like start there, because there's the least number to learn.
Right.
And that way it's easier for the child to remember. It's still the most frequent spellings of what you would see, but there's less to learn. So that way you don't overwhelm the child. Yeah. Then you go to side A, and then it's the harder phonemes. But I also start right to left and go into a C formation on side A, because the bottom ones are E and A, and it's just mayhem when you hit there.
Right, but you don't recommend starting at A and ending at Z, I'm assuming.
No, I mean, you can for primary, because they need to learn their alphabet, right? Once you do that, that's what I do. But when you pick up a book, like, does the book only have certain letters in it? So I teach them all the letters, because in French, you're going to see them all the time.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Wonderful.
So just so you know, my quote was taken from Lecture et Dyslexie. Springer and Charles wrote it in 2010, Évaluation de la compréhension et de la fluence, lecture à haute voix d'une courte récit. So just so you know, that's where it came from.
All right, and maybe after we can just create an image for that with the resources of how to get that. Yeah, I think that would be very useful to our viewers. And as you're watching live right now, if there are any questions, we will make an effort to answer them. Just drop them in the comment box below, because Jenny has some amazing resources that are definitely helpful. And you know, as parents, learning this code, I think, isn't too much of a demand if your child's at a French immersion program, because, you know, ideally they're going to stay in this program if it's an early immersion, you know, all the way through their education, or late immersion, at least in British Columbia, that usually starts at grade 6. So you know, it's worth learning. It's going to give you some extra skills, and you know, it's a way that you can learn. And you know, learning something with your child lets them show them that you're human, right? And it says,
so engaging with them
together.
But if you engage with the child and you show interest in the child, they will want to engage.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think during a pandemic, especially now, learning online, build that relationship. Because that's really more important than the content. Because if you at least build the content, build the relationship, the content will come.
Yeah.
They will get it.
Yeah. Now, what about, so for parents who are doing the transitional learning or some form of online learning right now, a big thing is having that vocabulary development. And if you don't speak French yourself, or not confident, and are worried about, you know, mispronunciations or the syntax and the grammar of what you're using, what do you recommend to have that exposure for your child? Are there some good resources for that?
So you want resources for grammar? Again, I would go to K-A-N-G, just because I love what he does. And he's like the further extension of what I do, because I stick with your phonological base, and he builds the walls of a house, right?
Right.
But I would use his kind of worksheets, or I would Becherel online. That is the one thing I do online, because it teaches you how to conjugate verbs. There's also some gameplay in there.
Oh, great.
But I honestly, learning the code, because when your teacher sends home the stuff, if you know how to do the code, you can do the work.
Right, but should you be letting your kids watch, movies in French,
Oh,
or music in French? Like, is that gonna help?
I'm sorry, it's been a long day.
that's what I'm trying to get to. Like, yes, I know
Absolutely.
that all the resources that we've been talking about, but is it useful for someone like in the primary grades where the kids are still trying to expand that French vocabulary, and if at home you don't have the knowledge, you can't have those conversations, you can't necessarily read those books, or you don't have access to those books because the libraries are closed, and you don't want to be investing in a whole load of French books at the moment with the economic conditions.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Netflix or YouTube and watching, the cartoons or or
Disney Plus in French.
Well, yeah.
Most kids know Disney movies. I mean, at some point and somewhere in the world, you've watched something. And just put it in French.
Yeah.
I mean, you know the context of the story, so just watch it over and over. Put on French radio, put on French music. Just say, Siri, play me some French songs. I'm sure something's going to come up.
Yes.
Be careful.
Charlotte Diamond has a lot of her songs released in French as well. I don't know if she's big out there, but she's a local artist. She does the Je suis a pizza.
Oh, nice. Oh, here we have Etienne.
Yeah.
He does a lot of French songs. He's Edu-Rock Education. There's also Jaco. He did some really good stuff. And it's all catchy tunes that you remember over and over and over. So I'm sure if you Google Jaco, you will find all kinds of songs.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what about the whole Quebecois, Parisian French? Like, is that something? As someone who does not speak French, but I hear these debates about Quebecois French and Parisian French, but learning the code shouldn't matter, right?
Learning the code should not matter. The sound is the sound, because the international alphabetic symbols are international for a reason.
Exactly.
Right? So that's the code part of it. Where it's accenting, everyone has their own accent. I sound different than a Quebecer, than a Parisian, than a Louisiana. Right? Like, we're all going to sound different because of our location. That's kind of like accent dialect.
Right.
But the code will remain the same.
Right. All right. So, Michael Hamelin says, Watermelon and Jenny helped my kids tremendously in French. Great product. Thank you, Michael. Yes, I'm definitely I know we've been conversing on Twitter for a while, but this is actually our first face-to-face conversation. And I just haven't had the time to really dive into your resources. But it's
that happens.
Definitely going to make a point of doing that, because as I said, I do have children in French immersion and I do not speak French. And it's something that I definitely want, because we're doing a transitional learning. So our children aren't in the classroom, and we want to make sure that we support those, the relationships.
I can guarantee you, if you learn the code, you'll be fine.
Right. Yes. So,
you'll be fine.
It's doable for us to do
it
as
is.
parents learning the code.
Well, because as parents, we already know how to read, right? So as long as we know the code, apply your reading skills that you already know. There you go.
Right. And, it can lead for some silly moments if you intentionally mispronounce a word. Or, no, you don't even have to be intentional about it, right?
But that's active learning. That's the best thing ever. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Learning from experience and, having those giggly moments on the couch. And, so we're going to definitely, after we finish this live, we're going to sit down and discuss the resources. And we will make a resource list. They will be available to you in the Garforth Education Parents Group. and the Garforth Education Teachers Group. So if you haven't taken a moment to join those groups, you can do so by looking at the comments with this video. And if you're watching this on replay, just do a hashtag replay. We'd love to know where you're from and if you've had any experience with this or do have any questions. And if this is something you are watching on the replay, do still feel free to ask questions and we'll find a way to address them after this video has shown. It is something that we are going to make available on YouTube afterwards, and we'll definitely make sure you have ways to access it after the fact, because I know there's a lot of information that we've been covering, and there's some great resources. I definitely plan on looking at them in the future. Now, do you have any kind of closing thoughts that you think we should let parents know about to help support their kids during this progress?
I think if you're doing online learning, it's start talking with them, read with them. And if you take a tangent, take the tangent. Don't worry about that I missed doing this one particular task, right? Their mental health and their tangent, that's wicked important right now. So deal with where they're at and then circle back to do the task that you didn't do at another point. But make sure you take care of them right now. I think that's more important because it's a scary time we're in right now. So, and who knows how long this could last or, what this is all going to look like in the future. So take care of you.
Yeah, of course. And, learning the code is something you could do with us. Times when you're not able to socialize and a little bit of a different task than binging on Netflix or.
Well, and it's gameplay, so it's fun.
Exactly. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jenny. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please comment, let us know your thoughts, and if you have any questions, and we will be making it available. That being said, have a great night, and we look forward to talking to you soon.